Welcome. I welcome Mr Andrew Shearer, Director General of the Office of National Intelligence and other officers, and welcome back to Minister Penny Wong. Mr Shearer, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, please, Chair.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. This will be my final appearance before this committee as the Director General of National Intelligence. I'd like to acknowledge the public accountability that this provides. It's important that Australians understand how our strategic environment is changing. When I first appeared before the committee in May 2021, the pandemic was only just receding and Australia was the target of sustained economic coercion. 4 years on, the pace, ambit and gravity of strategic change are, if anything, even greater than we anticipated. The Indo-Pacific is now the epicentre of global systemic rivalry. The guardrails that for decades separated competition from confrontation and conflict are weakening. Crises are overlapping and intersecting, bringing threats onshore faster, sometimes in real time. Warning times are shorter, meaning we have to act now if we are to be prepared for what may be coming. And some of the assumptions that underpinned international stability for decades can no longer be taken for granted. Most consequentially, should deterrence break down, notwithstanding the efforts of our government and our allies, we would face a rising risk of major conflict in our region within the next decade. For Australia, this adds up to a world that is less predictable and less forgiving. We face an environment where coercion below the threshold of conflict has become routine, where information, supply chains and emerging technologies are wielded as instruments of power, and where the contest over technology, data, standards, critical minerals and components will shape the economic and security order for years ahead. National power, security and economic resilience have always been related, but today are more interconnected than ever. Malign states are colluding with criminals and other non-state actors to enable hacking, sabotage, assassinations and political interference. The struggle for influence and strategic advantage in our region has intensified on every front. In the Pacific, efforts to build influence over elites have become more overt and sustained. In Southeast Asia, dangerous interceptions and rising tensions around the South China Sea illustrate how coercive tactics are increasingly used to assert spurious territorial claims. Japan is now being subjected to economic coercion, in addition to military and paramilitary pressure tactics. And China's growing power projection across a widening swathe of the Indo-Pacific, exemplified by the February circumnavigation of Australia by PLA Navy Task Group 107, demonstrates the speed, confidence and reach that now characterises regional military capability development and competition. I'm proud of how Australia's national intelligence community has responded to these developments over the past 5 years. Every day our nation, its agencies and our intelligence professionals are facing an environment characterised by incessant cyber attacks, unrelenting espionage and interference efforts, and increasing demands for actionable insights from across government, from the Australian Defence Force and from an expanding range of non-government stakeholders. Like the recipients of our intelligence, our staff are seeking to navigate accelerating and often polluted information flows, compressed warning and decision-making times, technological disruption, complexity and ambiguity. It's a demanding and often stressful operating environment. I'm pleased to say the independent intelligence review conducted last year confirms our agencies are rising to the challenge. We have improved our collection of classified and open source intelligence, strengthened our analytic foundations, including through the establishment of the National Intelligence Academy, better integrated our interagency efforts across the Australian intelligence missions, and built deeper partnerships with state and territory governments, industry, universities and think tanks. Our investments in technology, mission integration and tradecraft are yielding results, giving Australia a sharper, more responsive and more resilient set of intelligence capabilities. The establishment of the Interagency Cyber and Critical Technology Intelligence Centre within ONI has meant we are better equipped to understand and adopt new technologies and ways of working. And major cross-community initiatives, including the development of a common top-secret cloud environment, a more robust shared vetting capability and expanded parliamentary briefing facilities, will provide crucial platforms for our long-term effectiveness. And we've reinforced and augmented our international partnerships, providing greater support to the government's statecraft and foreign policy objectives. We've expanded our intelligence diplomacy, built new links in our region and deepened connections, particularly in Europe following the invasion of Ukraine, while also strengthening the daily collaboration that makes the Five Eyes such a critical and irreplaceable asset for our nation. We've shown the cumulative value of these individual initiatives in how we've responded to a more febrile and crisis-prone strategic environment. Our more agile mission structure and effects posture have enabled us to move swiftly and with precision in response to rapidly unfolding developments. And I remain proud of the way ONI, through its all-source assessments, open source intelligence and enhanced mission management, has provided warning, foresight and context in times of uncertainty, complexity and crisis. Over the past 5 years, this includes our coverage of conflicts in Afghanistan, Ukraine and the Middle East, as well as more recent clashes in our region. But it also extends to enduring challenges such as economic security, emerging technologies, people smuggling and transnational crime and regional military modernisation. In sum, ONI and Australia's other intelligence agencies are more capable, better coordinated and more unified than at any time in our history, and as ready as they can be, in a material sense, to take on the challenges of the next 5 years. But ultimately, it's our people and our culture that will ensure we are ready to continue serving and safeguarding Australia in whatever comes next. The national intelligence community I've had the privilege of leading draws tremendous strength and resilience from its shared sense of mission, its openness to innovation and partnering in new ways, and its insistence on integrity. These qualities have made us better prepared for the strategic circumstances I have outlined and better placed to meet the intensifying demands being placed on us. So I'd like to thank my fellow agency heads for their leadership, collegiality and support, and to express my deep respect for the men and women of the national intelligence community, including my outstanding team at ONI, which is even greater today than it was 5 years ago. Their quiet dedication, realism, focus and professionalism have been constants amid profound change, and I'm confident they will remain so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Shearer, and thank you for your service and for attending estimates for all those years, and best of luck in your next great adventure. We'll start with Senator Sharma.
Thanks, Chair. Let me just add on behalf of Coalition Senators my thanks to Mr Shearer as well for his leadership of the national intelligence community, and best wishes for his next assignment as Ambassador to Tokyo. Excellent. Can I just ask, Mr Shearer, is that the right title, or Director? Your experience of the Australian Government Security Vetting Agency and their timelines, because obviously most or all of your employees are security cleared. Have you noticed, in your experience, is the agency meeting its proposed timeframes to clear your people or onboard your employees?
So, Senator, just to clarify, you're asking about AGSFA, the Australian
Yeah, that's right, sorry, yeah, and your experience, particularly at AGSFA.
It'd be difficult for me to comment about AGSFA's current performance because the majority of our security clearances are now conducted by the TSPA, which is an ASIO resident capability, which is doing the top secret clearances for the national intelligence community.
So this is
henceforth.
what were called PVs before, right? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So that function for the intelligence agencies has moved to ASIO, and over time additional agencies, including the vast bulk of Defence's top secret clearances, are also moving to the TSPA.
Okay. So all your TSPAs are done by ASIO at the moment for your stuff?
Yes, the current and future pipeline is all done by ASIO.
Okay. And is that, I think AGSFA had a time frame of 180 business days for a positive vetting. Is ASIO meeting those timeframes? What's your experience to date?
We are still standing up the new ASIO capability as a community and transitioning cases to it. I think my own observation would be that the timelines are gradually improving as we build up the capability of the authority, but I'm not sure if our Chief Operating Officer would like to comment.
Tracy Carroll, Chief Operating Officer. In working with TSPA, we don't work to a time frame, and I can't talk to a particular time frame. They are meeting expectations in terms of what we would think with clearances. Prior to utilising the TSPA, we were doing clearances and continue to do some clearances in-house through this transition. So ONI are doing their own positive vetting security clearances, and timeframes are comparable.
Okay. Thank you. And then, Mr. Shearer, you touched on the circumnavigation by the PLA Navy Task Group in February of this year, the circumnavigation and the live fire exercise they conducted. What's your assessment of what China's objectives and intentions were by that exercise?
Senator, at the time I commented, I think that our preliminary assessment was that China was seeking to demonstrate that it has the capability to project and sustain maritime power further afield. And in doing that, it has, in our assessment, a number of objectives. One of them is to demonstrate to countries in the Indo-Pacific its military capabilities, to influence their decision-making calculus, to test their reactions to that presence. All of those reasons, and there were, and I won't go into them in detail, but there were aspects of that particular deployment that in our preliminary assessment were intended to have an intimidatory effect on us and by extension on other nearby countries.
And what would your assessment be now in Beijing of whether the objectives of that task group were met in terms of demonstrating an ability to project and sustain maritime power further afield, influencing countries, intimidating some countries?
Senator, it's difficult in this format for me to go into much detail on our insights into China's perceptions. All I think I would add, and the Deputy Prime Minister's commented on this already earlier today, that there will be further such task group deployments, and we would expect them to become more frequent and to continue demonstrating that ability to project and sustain naval power further from mainland China.
Have you seen, have there been similar exercises by the PLA Navy in other theatres?
Yes, they have, but these they have been fewer and somewhat different in nature. For understandable reasons, most of the PLAN's deployments are in waters closer to home, particularly the Western Pacific, but we've also seen task groups foraying further into the Indian Ocean, for example, all the way to the Persian Gulf.
Thank you. And could I just turn now to the Russia-Ukraine war? what's, whatever assessment you're able to share in this forum, your assessment of the current sort of battlefield and diplomatic picture?
Certainly the war has entered a phase which is increasingly difficult for Ukraine. In large part, that's a simple consequence of numbers and mass in military terms, and the number of troops that Putin continues to be able to field, notwithstanding the horrific Russian casualties, with some estimates, I think, of up to 1 million deaths and many more Russian troops wounded. It is difficult for Ukraine as a smaller country to continue mobilising, training and fielding the large forces required to defend it, and therefore manpower and also the weight of materiel, as Putin has built up a more effective war economy, means that increasingly Ukraine has found itself on the tactical defensive. Russian forces continue to make ground, unfortunately, in the Donbass, the eastern theatre of the conflict. They continue to strike Ukraine's energy grid in the lead up to the northern winter, and so the circumstances are obviously difficult for Ukraine at the moment.
And in terms of, you mentioned Russian materiel, what's your assessment of how the Russian economy is sustaining its war effort?
Because Putin has prioritised war production and stripped resources from other parts of the Russian economy, our assessment would be that he can continue to sustain the current rate of military effort for some time, but not indefinitely. The war is certainly taking a toll on Russia's medium and longer term economic prospects. In fact, I'd go so far as to say it's likely to be economically disastrous, or at least very damaging for Russia in the long term. But those impacts are unlikely to manifest in a way that constrains Putin's ability to support the war, at least in the next 1 to 2 or 3 years.
And how important is Russian exports of oil and gas as a source of revenue for the Russian Treasury and hence to fund the war effort?
I'm happy to defer to Deputy Director General Davidson on this, but I would say they are an important source of revenue for Putin's war economy.
Nina Davidson, Deputy Director General, just to confirm, as the Director General said, oil revenues are important for Russia.
And have we seen any, I mean, obviously some Russian oil companies have been sanctioned. Some countries have, including Australia, have prohibited the importation of unrefined Russian crude. Have we seen any material shift in their oil and gas revenues over the last 6 months?
I don't have those figures to hand, Senator, but I think it is fair to say, because of the significance of those export revenues to Russia, that the impact of effective sanctions is significant for Russia.
We'll rotate the call if you're...
Yes, of course. Yep. Thank you, Chair.
We'll go
Thank
to
you, Ms
Senator
Davidson.
Pocock.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your time. So you know that the Australian Government received your climate and security risk assessment, I think in early 2023. And I'm interested if you've provided any more advice to government on the risks of climate change since then.
Senator, climate change remains an important topic and a focus for our work, and from time to time we do draw government's attention to relevant developments, although obviously in this particular format I can't go into detail of the nature of that work.
Can you tell me when the last advice on climate change was provided to government?
I can't in this setting, Senator. No.
Not even a date?
I'm an eye to government.
Yeah.
I think you can't answer that.
Yeah, I can't. There are other forums where I could provide a little more elucidation, but not in a public estimates hearing, Senator.
And this is probably a very stupid question. I'm just interested why you can't give us a date. What will that reveal?
By long-standing convention, Senator, questions going to the natural content of our advice to government, because of the national security nature of the work that ONI does, are answered in other forums.
I understand your position on this, Senator Pocock, but I'd make a couple of points. One is we've been very clear that climate change is a national security issue. That's why the assessment was commissioned. There is non-classified assessment of national security implications in the annual climate change statements, meaning as in publicly available.
That's what we've seen, so say the UK and the US do a national security sort of climate assessment that's obviously a declassified version. I'm interested why we're not doing that in Australia.
I mean, there are other areas where we might choose to declassify and release information, including information that might not be released by some of our partners. Like every government has its makes its judgments about classified information and what. I mean, I think it's the fact that there are implications, national security implications from climate change as a consequence of climate change is something. It's not a controversial point for this government. It is a controversial point for the opposition, but it's not a controversial point for this government. And I mean, you can see when I was climate minister, these were some of the issues we were dealing with, and things have only worsened since. And you can see that in some of the events this year.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the reasons I've been so. I don't know, confused about not putting out a declassified version, given, as you said, it is such a risk. We have some in this place who would go beyond even trying to minimise it and trying to actually sort of deflect from the fact that it is such a huge risk to national security and indeed an existential risk for many of sort of smaller island nations in the region.
Well, I think, Senator, the Prime Minister himself, I think, in it might have been the Shangri-La dialogue, spoke about national security implications of climate change. These are issues we speak about, and what I don't agree with you is that the measure of the seriousness with which we take it is whether or not we declassify information, advice that is provided to the National Security
No, that wasn't
Committee.
my...
Well, I hadn't finished. National Security of Cabinet. So we have a different view on that. I don't think, we are clear about it. We talk about it. Mr. Bowen talks about it. The Prime Minister talks about it. My recollection is, I think it's at the annual assessment. That it's discussed there. So
Sure. I mean, I wasn't trying to insinuate that at all. I was more saying I feel like it would make the case for climate action, but I'm happy to leave that one, Mr. Shearer.
I wish you were right on that. My impression, though, of those who oppose action on climate change is that there is no rational explanation for their position, and so confronting them with more rational facts, and I agree with you, doesn't shift their position. They have the same position they had in 2009 when it said climate change was a left-wing conspiracy to deindustrialise the Western world.
Well, it's a bit harsh given Senator Sharma is sitting there, but I take your point.
I'm used to it.
All right, Senator Collins, she's on the other side.
Well, I'd say I think...
But I'm not actually making a...
I'll exercise a right of reply.
Sure, I understand where you're going with that, Minister. Mr. Shearer, clearly this ONI report that you did has created a fair bit of interest from crossbenchers, the media. There've been a number of, requests to get at OPDs, all the rest. I'm interested in the wake of that. Has the government given any directive, written, verbal, informal, not to do more work on climate or provide more updates on climate?
Sorry, has the government given a direction not to do more work?
Yes.
No.
No. Okay. Thank you. And under ONI's resourcing and tasking arrangements, where's climate risk placed in your prioritisation framework?
I would say it's a priority among a range of issues, and it relates to a number of bodies of work that are priorities for the office. It's difficult, Senator, to sort of detach one particular thematic issue from a wider body of work because of the obvious interconnections between climate and many other aspects of our analysis. But it's certainly a priority, and it's reflected in our wider national intelligence community priorities.
And if elements of climate works are occurring, what are the specific outputs, timelines and responsible parts of ONI? Can you tell us what that looks like?
So without getting into operational detail, Senator, that might divulge capabilities, I would say that our outputs embrace the normal range of ONI outputs in terms of written intelligence assessment products, open source intelligence products, and from time to time briefings, including some that I think you've participated in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your service. Wish you all the best in Japan. Hope you have a good time over there.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Shearer. Congratulations on your appointment, and thank you very much for your successful...
Just my nomination, Senator, at this point.
Oh, okay. Your nomination.
There's still
Congratulations
a process where the Japanese government has to give consideration to my nomination.
Well, congratulations then on your successful oversight of ONI. It's terrific what you're doing there. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you a little bit about something you said in your opening statement about in the Pacific, the efforts to build influence over elites have become more overt and sustained. I just wondered whether you could just generally comment on the nature of China's strategic intent in the Pacific first, but then perhaps, if you can, give some examples of those overt actions to build influence.
Again, Senator, I'll be a little circumspect in this setting, but I would say that we are, I think Foreign Minister Wong has referred to this as a permanent contest for influence, and we are seeing a China which is purposefully using all of the facets of national power to build greater influence, not only in the South Pacific but in Southeast Asia and indeed globally. And that includes traditional forms of diplomacy. It includes Chinese initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, the Global Civilizational Initiative, various other initiatives that are generally superintended by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We also see them building a greater security presence in areas like policing, and employing, if I could put it this way, the full toolkit of national power to achieve those regional objectives.
Thank you. That's it from me.
I could just have a couple of
Certainly.
minutes, that's right. I just wanted to go back to Russia-Ukraine war, Mr. Shearer. How is that being seen and interpreted in the Indo-Pacific, and how are major powers there interpreting the lessons, I guess, of that conflict? And to take it further, how will the resolution of that conflict, or the way in which it is resolved, how do you think it's likely to influence the calculations of strategic actors in our region?
So I think there's widening appreciation that what happens in Europe has strategic implications further afield, including here in the Indo-Pacific and indeed globally. I think other actors are drawing lessons from what plays out there at different levels. Certainly at the level of battlefield tactics and capabilities, a range of state and non-state actors are learning lessons about the changing character of warfare. In my view, the nature of warfare tends not to change, but the character of warfare is changing rapidly. The deployment of drones in that conflict being the most obvious example, and the tactics that sit around that, but it's not the only example. Other forms of asymmetric capability development are being studied in almost real time and imported elsewhere. But I also think that lessons are being learnt at the strategic level about the conflict, and I personally believe that the outcome of the current diplomatic process will have consequences, certainly for Europe's future security, of course most obviously for Ukraine's future security, but for the future of the European security order, but also more broadly because if the conflict ends in a way which doesn't guarantee Ukraine's future security and doesn't produce a more stable security order in Europe, it will undermine deterrence here in the Indo-Pacific, and that would have important ramifications for our future security.
Thanks, Mr. Shearer. In the interest of time, I'll leave my questions there.
We'll go to Minister Wong.
Yes, I just wanted to close, and obviously the government has, in different contexts, also thanked Andrew for his work, but I did want to, in the public forum, also express my thanks to DGNI Shearer for his work over many years. His advice is insightful and strategic, and many governments of Abbott, Howard and then Albanese have benefited from his strategic insight. My nomination of him, or our nomination of him as ambassador to Japan, is very considered, and reflects not only Andrew's background in terms of our relationship with Japan, but as our special strategic partner. This is a very important relationship for Australia, and it, I think, says something both about Andrew, but also about the relationship that we choose to nominate him for that position. So I look forward to, he's going to be working for me. It's all right, he's working for the Australian people. Anyway, so we thank you for your service, DGNI Shearer. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
And on that note, thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your years of attending, and best of luck. We will now release you from the program, and we will also say a fond farewell to Minister Wong, who will also leave us now at this point.
You're going to miss me?
Yeah!
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will call the Office of the Official Secretary to the Governor-General to the table. So I'd like to welcome Mr Gerard Martin, Official Secretary, and other officers of the Official Secretary to the Governor-General. Mr Martin, do you have an opening statement?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just a brief one.
Brief would be lovely.
Absolutely. So Gerard Martin, Official Secretary to the Governor-General. So the office has continued to support the Governor-General in performing her constitutional, ceremonial, Commander-in-Chief and community duties. And she's now undertaken over 800 official engagements since being sworn in. Since the last estimates, the office has supported the Governor-General to preside over a further 5 Executive Council meetings and applying royal assent to 24 bills. The Governor-General held credential ceremonies in October, welcoming heads of mission from 3 countries, as well as 2 non-residential presentations in November. The Governor-General undertook a regional visit to South Australia and the Northern Territory in October, meeting with community members in Ceduna and Port Lincoln and ADF personnel in Adelaide. While in the Northern Territory, the Governor-General travelled to Yalara to attend events commemorating the 40th anniversary of the handback of Uluru. In November, the Governor-General met with Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal at Admiralty House in Sydney. The Princess Royal was in Australia as a guest of the Chief of Army in her role as Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Australian Corps of Signals, who this year celebrated 100 years of service. The Governor-General joined the Princess Royal at the Remembrance Day Sunday service at the Anzac Memorial in Hyde Park and the Centenary Parade with members of the Signals Corps at Victoria Barracks. The Governor-General has participated in a number of international meetings, including with the Prime Minister of Singapore, Mr Wong, with the President of Indonesia, who visited Australia as a guest of government in November, where the Governor-General hosted a ceremonial welcome, discussions and a state lunch for the President, and recently also met with Mr Zhao Leji, the Chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress of China. And finally, Government House opened its doors to the public on the 1st of November for an open day, which attracted nearly 3,000 people into the grounds of Government House. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Sharma.
I'm happy to defer the call to others.
You guys called them.
Can I just ask that?
I will. I've got.
Oh,
you go
maybe
ahead.
you didn't.
We didn't know anything.
No, sorry, my error.
I've got questions.
Senator Collins, did you have?
I did just a question from the opening statement.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair. Did you say that you had the Chairman come to visit the Governor-General at her residence?
Yes, Senator, that's right.
Okay. And all the staff, how many people came to the residence? How many accompanied the Chairman to the residence?
Look, I'd have to take the exact number on notice, Senator, but there was the Chairman was a guest of the Parliament, so hosted by the presiding officers, and there was an accompanying delegation, as there usually is with the Principal,
Okay.
some of whom accompanied to the visit to Government House.
Okay. Are you aware if the staff received the same email that the members of Parliament did warning about devices?
We didn't receive that email, Senator.
So there was no security briefing on what to do about devices around?
So we always take our own security precautions around any international visit to Government House, Senator, but we weren't a recipient of that email from the Parliament.
Did you take the same precautions that we were advised to take here in Parliament House?
Senator, we don't usually comment on the specifics of the security arrangements, but we always take appropriate security arrangements put them in place for any international visitor. Did
you get extra advice on this particular trip from any national security agencies or national intelligence agencies on?
We always consult with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in the lead up to any international visitor to Government House.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr Martin, thank you for coming. I know this is a very short appearance. Unfortunately, the other senators who did have questions for you are stuck in other sessions and aren't going to make it across to us. So you may find that you have a few questions on notice, but I would like to thank you very much for your time, and we do appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much. We might just suspend for a moment while we find our next group. Thank you so
Chair.
much, Mr. Martin.
Sure.
We'll suspend. Welcome to the Honourable Senator Don Farrell, Special Minister for State, and Mr Matt Yiannopoulos, Secretary and other officers of the Department of Finance. Minister, would you like to make an opening statement?
Oh, Chair, thank you for the opportunity to do that, but I don't want to eat into the time of the questions of the other senators, so I won't make a opening statement on this occasion.
Thank you. Mr Yiannopoulos.
No, not this evening, thank you.
Okay. So, Senator McGrath, would you like to start us off?
Thank you, Chair. Minister and Secretary and officials, welcome. Secretary, at the last estimates, I asked you whether the Minister had asked the Department to prepare any advice on the cost of increasing the size of Parliament, which you took on notice. As of about 5 minutes ago, that question still hasn't been answered. So I was just wondering if you were able to give me an update as to where the answer may be, but also maybe speak to the answer if it's being held up somewhere.
Thank you, Senator. We're still working with the Special Minister of State's office to get all of our quants tabled.
Okay.
I don't know that I have a copy of the material because the tabling should happen after the Minister has approved it.
And Minister, when will you be approving the questions on notice from the last estimates?
There's been an unusually short gap between the last estimates and these estimates, and just to ensure that absolutely everything that we supply to you, Senator McGrath, is correct, it'll be a little bit longer. But rest assured, my mum used to say this, every question has an answer, and you'll be sure to get yours.
I didn't have too many questions that were put on notice, so I'm disappointed to hear, Minister, that you've not been able to process them in time for tonight's hearings.
It'll be one of my great regrets in my career, Senator McGrath, to have disappointed you.
Well, I'm sure you'll take that to the grave and it'll be mentioned at your state funeral. Now, well, Secretary, are you able to, notwithstanding the very earnest answer from the Minister, are you able to say yes or no whether you have prepared any advice to the Minister on the cost of increasing the size of Parliament?
My understanding, Senator, is it's the entitlement of the Minister to release that information. We have prepared an answer. I think Minister Farrell would like to make sure he's satisfied with that.
Okay. Well, can you provide some details, Secretary, on what types of issues you would need to consider in relation to the impact on an increase to the size of Parliament?
Well, Senator, if we were asked to provide, some advice to government, we'd consider the costs for each parliamentarian, electorate office costs, staffing costs, costs for transport, costs for all of the resources that are available under the Parliamentary Budget Resources Act.
Would you need more departmental resources to assist with an increase in the size of Parliament?
Senator, that question kind of strays into a hypothetical. It would depend on what's the nature of the increase in the size of the Parliament. I have some parts of my department that are sensitive to the numbers in terms of my payroll processing staff or drivers, and other areas which are policy making which would have less sensitivity.
Have you had have there been internal meetings within the department about the possible increase in the size of Parliament?
Not to my awareness. Just check with colleagues. We haven't. No.
Okay. Have you had meetings with the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet in relation to the possible increase into the size of the Parliament?
Not to my awareness, Senator.
Okay. Just in relation to the questions that were taken on notice, there were ones in relation to staff pay processing, opposition staffing, staff contracts and processing delays and staff deferrals. Coalition staff who've had issues with their pay are still waiting for an answer. So I would hope, Minister, that if you could look at the answers that have been provided by the department to you, and if they could be processed sooner rather than later.
Could you just run that by me again, Senator?
There were questions on notice about issues with the processing of staff pay, opposition staffing, staff contracts and processing delays and staff deferrals, mainly in relation to coalition staff.
And do you think they have not been resolved?
I don't think they have been resolved, Minister. So I was just, and that's why the questions were put on notice. So if you could, and I'm happy to have a conversation offline if that assists.
Your staff should not have to wait for me to give you a response in order to get their issues resolved. So I shall pursue that and try and come back to you as soon as possible.
Tomorrow's fine, but as long as you're just aware of those issues.
No, I thought, look, my honest understanding, Senator, was that we had resolved all of those issues. So if they haven't been resolved, then I'll very quickly get to the bottom of what's happened here.
No worries. Thank you.
Your staff shouldn't be paying for your sins, Senator McGrath.
Well, they shouldn't pay for the sins of politicians generally. My staff suffer enough as it is. I wouldn't want others to suffer. James, do you want to have some questions now?
Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. Is Finance familiar with reporting out of the UK relating to CTM, known as Corporate Travel Management?
Yes, Senator. But the officials who will be able to help on this will be available tomorrow for our other outcomes.
I will have further questions tomorrow, although there was an official coming to the table who may be able to help. I will have further questions tomorrow, but obviously CTM is a whole of government travel provider for all government agencies, but it also provides travel for parliamentarians.
Yes.
Which is why I'm asking the question here. So what can you tell me at this stage about any action that Finance has taken in response to the very serious reports of overcharging the UK government?
Senator, my colleague Mr Newman, I should say, has just suggested IPIA, who's coming on this evening, might be better placed to give you an answer this evening.
All right, I can ask them and then we may revisit it tomorrow.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Senator Sharma, did you have anything?
I don't, Chair.
Yep, Senator McGrath.
To the Minister, in relation to the plans to increase the size of Parliament, Minister, have you or your office had any meetings or briefings with the presiding officers or the Department of Parliamentary Services in relation to the capacity of Parliament House and planning for additional MPs and senators?
No.
Have you had any meetings with the Australian Electoral Commission about the redistribution processes that would be required to implement an expansion of Parliament?
No.
Some of the evidence that has been given to JSCAM hearings has suggested that the proposal to increase the Parliament could be cost neutral if MPs and senators' staff numbers were cut. Is that something you would support, the cutting of staffing of existing MPs and senators?
No.
Can you guarantee that staffing numbers will remain the same if the size of Parliament was increased?
I could guarantee that my view would be that the staffing numbers should remain the same.
Have you given any further consideration to the cutting of the opposition staffing numbers?
That is an issue entirely in the purview of the Prime Minister. I'm happy to raise with him again that issue when he comes back from his honeymoon.
Were you at the wedding, Minister?
Matter of fact, I was, Senator McGrath. In
Yes.
fact, I was wearing this very suit.
Okay.
And a rather dapper hat.
And what present did you give to the happy couple, may I ask?
I think that would be inappropriate to reveal, but certainly it was something very significant from South Australia.
Wine?
I'm not going to reveal it. If the Prime Minister chooses to reveal it, well, then that's his choice. But no, can I say it was a beautiful event, and they are a beautiful couple, and we wish them all the very best.
I'm all good, Chair. I do have some other questions I might speak offline to the Minister about in relation to staffing issues.
Senator Patterson, did you have any other? No, you're good. Senator Sharma, you're all good.
It is customary for the government to release the staffing tables at this hearing.
I'm not asking for
I was going to say.
Yes.
You had completely forgotten to ask for it.
I
could have.
to be fair. So
I
you're
could
very
have-
good staff. And so
Hey,
am I, but
this is just how honest, this government is. It
You're a good
releases
man, Don.
information.
Yes.
Releases information even when we aren't asked to do so.
Even when not asked. See, I love the transparency. Senator Hodgins-May, did you have some questions? Because I am just about to release these good people.
sorry.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Sorry, I'm a couple of minutes late. Minister, you might recall at the last estimates I've raised, and in fact had previously tabled in the Senate report from the Centre for Public Integrity that found that the 47th Parliament was the second worst for using public interest immunity claims to block Senate orders for the production of documents. Have you now read that report, Minister?
No.
Do you intend to read it? I think last time you told me that you would take a look.
Yes, I've been busy, but I will ensure that I do read it.
I appreciate that.
Just had a few issues on of late.
Don't we all? So I know that some of my questions on notice about this are now with the Department of Senate, which I found out from your office only after, unfortunately, they'd appeared as a witness today. Am I right in understanding that it is the Department of Senate that is responsible for advising ministers around the use of public interest immunity claims and other such matters as they relate to OPDs? Is that? I can see your advisor shaking your head.
Actually, I'm uncertain, Senator. It would not be the Department of Finance. So it is likely the Department of Senate, or Prime Minister in Cabinet normally gives advice on the grounds for public interest immunity claims.
Okay, so we're not sure who provides advice regarding OPDs.
As it relates to a minister, I think was your question.
Yeah, well, a minister.
When it relates to officials, and only ministers can seek
right.
it, that advice is provided in a circular form from the Prime Minister and Cabinet.
So it's Prime Minister and Cabinet, okay, because
Yes.
I believe that we were told that it was Department of Senate. So, okay. And you're quite sure about that
It would be
now?
unlikely to be the Department of Senate. I'm told it's likely to be the PM&C.
PM&C for both Senate and Lower House. Yeah, that's where the advice comes from.
That is my understanding.
Okay. Can you take that on notice?
I'm happy to take it on notice and then
That'd be
clarify.
great. We've been trying to work that out for some time now. Appreciate it. All right. Just a sec. So I'm curious to know, I know you haven't read the CPI's report that I that I mentioned, but have you put in any thought into their recommendation to consider an independent legal arbiter of OPDs? Is that something
Senator High, Simon Newnham, Deputy Secretary. Senator, that's really a question for other departments. It would be, for example, Prime Minister and Cabinet thinking about the total system as such, or indeed advice potentially from the Attorney General's Department as well. That wouldn't be a question for the Department of Finance as one of many departments that has ministers that may or may not face OPDs across the board.
Thank you. And look, I acknowledge this might also need to be directed to elsewhere, potentially PM&C. But can I ask a special Minister of State and someone with I think a strong interest in Australia's democracy, whether you know how many questions on notice are currently unanswered at the start of this estimates week? Is that...
We did address this before you...
Okay, my apologies. I've been in the next room over.
Okay, no difficulty with that. But I did make the point that there's been a... you mean from the last estimates you're talking about?
Yeah, at the start of the week, this week, so this morning, how many outstanding questions on notice?
From the last set of...
In total that haven't been answered yet?
Not just questions from the last estimates?
No. Totality.
Okay. Then I don't know the answer.
You don't know. And from the last estimates, can you take that on notice for me, please? And from last estimates.
Sure. Yeah. Look, I made the observation that there's an unusually short gap between the last estimates. In fact, it almost seems like only a couple of weeks ago that we were.
Yeah. No. I appreciate that. I heard a figure that it was standing at 7,600 this morning, which sounds not from last estimates, but that still remain outstanding. And I'd like to know whether that is actually correct. It sounds like a fairly astronomically high.
Can I just clarify, Senator? Your question actually is about every single outstanding question across the entirety of...
Correct, not just your department.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, we could certainly answer tomorrow the question about this department and the questions on notice that remain, and the parliamentary questions that notice that remain. We wouldn't have data on the entirety of all outstanding questions on notice.
If you're if you're comfortable providing yours, that would be appreciated.
We'll have that figure for you tomorrow. And noting, of course, we may in fact have very few if there's some tabling tomorrow, but we'd be happy to do that tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you. And I suppose my question was, I'll rotating the call.
We've been working on what's outstanding in this committee, which is we had over 1,000 come in Friday, 700 on Saturday. So there's an awful lot of clearing. Exactly as the Minister said, it's a very tight sort of time frame between the two.
Sure.
But there's a lot that are wrestling their way to the website as we
excellent.
speak.
I'm very comforted to hear that. I suppose I was asking more of the Special Minister of State as someone who oversees, who represents the whole Parliament, whether the Minister had some indication, some inkling of an idea of how many remain outstanding. But I see you shaking your head, so we will continue
too frightened to ask the question, Senator.
From the data that I've seen, I can understand why. Is your government taking any action to ensure your ministerial officers and departments can respond to questions on notice rapidly to enable the Senate to do its job? Is there any sort of anything in train to help facilitate that faster process?
Of these getting answers?
Yes.
Well, you could stop putting in the request. That would certainly
Where's
speed
the fun in
things
that?
up.
Where's the democracy in that?
Well, this is the most accountable government in the history of the Australian Parliament, and you've only got to look at some of the things I've done in the electoral space. Think about that transparency that you're going to see at the start of the next election. all those donations, Senator McGrath, that you get, you're going to have to declare them all. And the Australian people will be able to make a decision about who they're going to vote for based on who else is backing that particular candidate. Just one example of
Well, I
what
certainly
we've done.
won't be. I hope you're not planning to diminish our right to use this lever to ask questions of departments. All right. I think that is all from me. Hang on just one moment. Hang on. Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm going to ask another one. Just a question to the department about the electoral law reform laws and their implementation ahead of the 1st of July 2026. Can the department advise on what date advance funding under the new electoral reforms will be available before the next federal election, and when will the supporting regulations be released?
Would that be a better question asked of the Electoral Commission? Will you have somebody who can answer it here? Oh, well, if you have, good.
Someone's confidently opening their folder, so I'll take that as a good sign.
Senator Anna Harmer, Acting Deputy Secretary of Governance and Resource Management. I think, as the Special Minister of State has said, the AEC is after us and is, of course, charged with implementing the reforms and might be able to provide some greater detail on the timing and planning for that. The department has a role in developing the rules and regulations that support that, and I might ask Ms Atkinson whether there's any detail she can give about that development process ahead of the AEC, who can give detail on timings. Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Lucinda Atkinson, First Assistant Secretary, Governance and Resource Management. As Ms Harmer said, we are in the process of developing the regulations that are necessary to set the timing for the advanced electoral funding. Ultimately, the form of those regulations will be a matter for the Special Minister of State, and they will need to be in place, obviously, before the commencement of the new Reform Act. And then it will be a matter for the AEC to implement those payments.
Thank you. Do you know when you're likely to know? Like a month before, a week before? How much notice we should anticipate?
Senator, I don't have that information at the minute. It is a matter of that we're still working through with the Special Minister of State and his office.
Thank you. If there's any more information you can provide on notice, I'd be very grateful. Thank you. And just back to the Minister, and you might refer me to the AEC, but I'll ask it of them as well, perhaps. And it might be on notice. In your opinion, as a Minister with some level of oversight over electoral reform, do you think the AEC is on track to deliver implementations of all parts of the electoral reform, particularly the disclosure requirements?
I'd be absolutely certain that they are.
Okay, that's good. Glad to hear. And are you open to permitting the AEC and users of the new system a 6-month transition period, as I believe has been previously floated by the AEC?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by a transition period. The new laws will come into effect on the 1st of July next year.
So a period from, I suppose, the 1st of July to 31st of December to get us acquainted to the system and new regulations.
Well, the new laws will come in on the date that is prescribed in the legislation that went through in February of this year. And I would expect that to be the timing that the AEC implements.
Okay, thank you. I do note that the AEC had floated themselves the possibility of a transition period, so if anything changes, please keep us informed. I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent.
One quick one.
Certainly, Senator McGrath.
Minister, it's dated, the staffing table's dated the 1st of November, which was a month ago. I was just wondering, have there been any additional staff employed by the government since that date? I understand it might be a quirk in the system in terms of how the information is extracted, but just have there been any changes to this table since the 1st of November, or the Secretary might be able to answer that question?
Because today is the 1st of December, and that should have been the day that the information starts from, that was a difficult time frame to meet. I shall get you an answer to that question, and if there is any change, I shall supply it to the...
Thank you, Minister. I appreciate that. and I appreciate the advice of your staff. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We will now release you from the program, and we will ask the AEC to make themselves available. Should be they're just next door.
No worries, thank you. Have a good Christmas.
Welcome, Mr. Pope, and other officers of the Electoral Commission. Do you have an opening statement?
No, I don't, Chair.
Chair, on this occasion, I do have one.
Fantastic, please, Minister.
I'm very pleased to be able to report that to this committee that I intend to recommend to the Governor-General at the earliest opportunity Mr Jeff Pope as the Australian Electoral Commissioner. We believe Mr Pope is the right person for the job. With years of service at the AEC, including delivering the largest federal election in our history earlier this year, there is no one better suited to safeguard the integrity of one of Australia's most respected and trusted institutions.
Delighted at your appointment, Mr Pope.
Thank you, Chair.
Do you have an opening statement?
No, I don't. Thank you, Chair.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
We'll start with Senator McGrath.
Thank you, Chair, and Mr Pope. Congratulations on your appointment. We look forward to working with you and the government in relation to matters to protect and grow Australia's democracy. So I've got a series of questions here. In relation to the new electoral laws covering donations and expenditure, have you formed an assessment, has the AEC formed an assessment whether political participants, third parties, political parties, will be in a position to comply with the new laws by the 1st of July next year?
Thanks, Senator. We have undertaken wide degree consultation, as you would expect, as we start to work towards it through the implementation. We've started up a number of user groups, and we've been communicating with political parties, third parties, significant third parties, etc., right across the spectrum. And I think I indicated at the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters that some of them have indicated that their view is the legislation is very complex, and particularly those that need to make system changes have indicated that that complexity is fairly high, and some of them have expressed to us that a bit more time for implementation might suit them. I want to emphasise we are on track to implement on the 1st of July, but that is certainly some of the sentiment that we're hearing from some of the stakeholders.
And have you passed your concerns on to the government? Also, have you passed on the concerns of those stakeholders on to the government?
Well, as I said, I mentioned it at the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters, and we continue to have conversations as we progress through the implementation. Just
in relation to the questions on notice, which I haven't been uploaded yet. I don't know if they've been answered yet. So you supply your questions on notice to the Minister's office?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When did you supply them to the Minister's office?
I think we had quite a large number, at least by our standards, a large number of questions on notice. And I think we got them in either by the due date or very close to the due date, maybe with one or two exceptions that have missed the due date. So it was, so I think we're talking Friday-ish.
Minister, given the AEC's very unique role, could you have given priority to approving these questions, taking into account your answer to my previous questions concerning the department, but considering the independent nature of the AEC, whether these questions could have been cleared in time for this evening's hearing?
Look, I go back to my original answer, Senator McGrath. There's been a very short period between the last estimates and this one, and we'll process them absolutely as quickly as we can.
Commissioner, in your submission, I'm going to refer to your submission to the JSCAM inquiry. I think it's on page 2. You say there are around 2,200 complaints relating to political parties or conduct on polling booths. Can I ask, of those 2,200 complaints, how many of those were actually raised directly with the relevant political party or third party?
Senator, that's a very difficult question for us to answer because that's not all done centrally. As you would appreciate, the delivery of the elections highly decentralised. So there would be complaints being provided to candidates, party workers, state secretaries, national secretaries all over the country at various levels. So that is a very difficult question for us to answer.
So you can't say with certainty that every complaint was passed on to a relevant party official or party unit as such?
I can't guarantee that, Senator, but I mean, I think what I can say is our staff are generally very good at resolving complaints quickly and preferably locally in the first instance through constructive conversations with party workers and candidates, and then there's generally escalation through to state secretaries and then generally escalation through to national secretaries.
Is there guidance given to pre-poll, polling day and pre-poll officials in relation to inappropriate behaviour? So, for example, if a volunteer in a purple shirt for the purple party is behaving badly, is there a policy to say that the relevant polling place official must raise that concern with the purple party, or is it left to their discretion as to whether they raise it or not raise it?
Look, I'll start off and then I might ask the Deputy to complement my answer. I think, again, that's... we always try and manage complaints through a consultative process, and we try and do that locally in a constructive way. You might have heard me say, though, at the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters that given the environment of a few pockets of the election, we discourage some of our OICs from going outside of the 6 metres where they don't have any authority. But nonetheless, and if they felt that they were able to resolve it constructively, they would. Otherwise, they would notify, most likely, the Divisional Returning Officer or the State Manager and would escalate that. But I'll ask the Deputy to complement my response.
Senator Kath Gleeson, Acting Deputy Electoral Commissioner. The Commissioner's right. We have escalation processes in place, and to your question, yes, there are escalation protocols in training that our temporary election workforce receive, especially those who are in charge of polling places. That's included in their handbook and in their training. In some instances, as the Commissioner says, they'll be encouraged to call for calm if they feel that they are able to do that, or they are to escalate to their early voting liaison officer if it's a pre-poll voting centre, or to their polling place liaison officer if it's a static polling place on polling day. Those are agents of the divisional returning officers, and then there's escalation beyond those staff to the DRO, then to the AEO, and then up to me in my capacity as the National Election Manager, if needed. And we do that in a very dynamic way, as you can appreciate, during the voting period.
So in your experience, when concerns have been raised with party headquarters, party officials, state secretaries, whatever, are the parties responsive to the concerns that have been raised?
I would say, it's hard for me to think of an exception where that's not the case. We get a very positive response from state secretaries and national secretaries of all of the major parties. So that escalation process, which has been in place for many elections, and their relationships that we have also built over time, I think is very effective.
So it works well in that
regard? Yes. Yeah. We don't always agree with each other, Senator, but we're always very respectful with each other, and in my view, it works well.
There has, in relation to the current JSCAM inquiry, it's looking into a number of matters, the running of the 2025 election, but in particular, the Special Minister of State has asked the committee to look into effectively the size of Parliament. And while it's ultimately a matter for Parliament to determine the size of Parliament, how long would it take for the AEC to do a full national redistribution that would come out of a proposal to increase the size of Parliament?
It's a little difficult to answer with a great degree of certainty, Senator, because obviously it depends on how many new members are being added. Is it 5 or is it 50? Because each one of those new members in the House needs a new seat. So we, assuming there is a national increase across all states and potentially all territories, depending on Parliament's direction, we would need to conduct effectively a national redistribution. That would be, take some time, complex data, resources, and I would think something Parliament might want to think about is actually providing us with some legislation that might allow us to perhaps streamline the current process, because the current process takes around about 12 months for a state-wide redistribution. So there might be some opportunities to look at how that could be streamlined, but it's difficult for me to say just how long that would take.
So if Parliament had, for example, a sunset clause or something like that would streamline the process from 12 months down.
I think that could be one option, yes, and then that would not bind the Parliament for that sort of streamlined process beyond the sunset clause.
Senator McGrath, when you come to a useful stop, we'll rotate the call.
I've got one more question in that case, and then I've got some more. What's the? I suppose it's subject to the will of Parliament, but what's the drop dead deadline for you to have a redistribution done? Is there a time frame that where you must have electoral boundaries completed?
There's not a legislated time frame, Senator, and some might recall that we gazetted the Northern Territory redistribution, I think, on the 5th of March this year before the election in May, so that was effectively 2 months. However, that was only 2 electoral divisions. there is a reasonable time required, depending on the size of the redistribution, for us to implement the changes in our system. Our system is a very old system. It's our legacy system, and it is highly complex, and we're talking about a lot of data in a legacy system. So a complex redistribution, for instance, the Queensland redistribution, would take many months for us to implement in the back end to get that right before an election. The other, I think the other answer to your question though, Senator, is parties would probably also require some time to get their house in order in preparation for an election, to understand, you know, what new electoral divisions are available, pre-selection, etc., etc. So, you know, it's again difficult for me to say, but both parties and the AEC, I think, would need a good degree of time to implement that properly.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Senator Hodgins-May.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I just want to clarify a point the Minister made earlier on my question about that transition period for the program of electoral reforms coming live on 1st of July 2026, now that Mr Pope joins us. I just want to read a quick quote that was made at the JSCEM hearing, just to try and get clarity. This is not a comment that I make because we require extra time, but I do think some stakeholders would benefit from this. Where is it? Hang on. Sorry. Yeah, this is not a comment that I make because we require extra time, but I do think not only is this complex for us, this is incredibly complex for a number of entities and parties and their systems, particularly if they are looking to try and automate their disclosures on a monthly basis as required under the new legislation and more frequently during the election. I note that Parliament, in passing legislation, may be somewhat anticipated that and provided a window of up to 12 months for the Minister to consider. And I think that broadly, with the implementation of feedback that we're getting from a number of stakeholders, 1st of January 2027. So can I just get clarity whether the Minister has a view on whether this extra time will be considered and allowed and what it might look like?
I have considered that, and we're going to stick with the time frame in the legislation.
Okay, so there'll be no window of consideration given.
And don't forget, the Greens were pleading for this transparency. I've delivered it. And now you've got...
what we're pleading for.
Well, yes, you were. Yeah, it was the one part of the legislation that you supported.
I'm just trying to clarify.
So
We have been
having asked for it, having asked for the, I mean, all the independents, all the Teals, all the Greens said, no, this is what we want. So I've delivered it. Now you've got to comply with your...
This is less around transparency, but it's more around the implementation. Just want to get clarity because there are stakeholders who are anxious.
That is the transparency provisions. That is what we're talking about here, the transparency provisions.
Okay, so conversations happened maybe between that JSCEM hearing and today that ruled out any scope for leniency in that
Having
period.
thought about it, I think the best thing I can do is stick with the timetable in the legislation. That's what I intend to do.
Thank you,
and that's
Minister.
what I'll be asking the AEC to do.
And Mr Pope, while I'm here, can you comment on the AEC's preparedness to implement the reforms and whether there are any particular elements that you were seeking delay on, or you're on board?
No, and Senator, to be very clear, as I was saying to Senator McGrath, that I was reflecting the feedback that we've been getting from some of the stakeholders. Yeah. It's and I've been very clear both in that evidence to JSCEM that the AEC remains on track to implement this by the 1st of July next year. It's going to be challenging. Like it's a quick implementation and it is complex legislation, but we are on track to implement on the 1st of July next year, as the government, as the Senator, as the Minister has just has outlined, and that is what we will do. And we'll work very hard with all of the stakeholders to assist them to the fullest extent that we possibly can to get them as prepared as possible for the 1st of July. So that's our position.
Senator, just after the election, Mr Pope was kind enough to introduce me to the team working on this, and if anybody would like to meet that team, I'm sure Mr Pope would facilitate a meeting at the AEC.
Thank you. And in terms of, maybe we can take better notice, but where these stakeholders should address their concerns too, if they're ongoing to...
No need to take that on notice, Senator. I might ask our Chief Operating Officer to respond to that.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you. Rachel Houghton, Chief Operating Officer. We have on our AEC website quite a lot of information about the funding and disclosure reforms, and included on there is an ability for people to register for our user groups, ask questions, and we have an email address that they can email us at.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for appearing again. Look forward to your sessions. Returning to my question in the last estimates around accuracy on the voter rolls, you made the statement, and I'll quote you, "We undertake extraordinary integrity measures every year to maintain the accuracy of the roll, and we report on our performance measures around the accuracy of the roll in our annual report." End of the quote. In your report for 2024-25, on page 18, we found this statement, quote, "This year we undertook a comprehensive review to validate the breadth of controls across the roll program." Mr Pope, there's a further explanation of that process which I don't find sufficiently exhaustive. Can you provide on notice the methodology of this review? And if it is not the same thing, the extraordinary integrity measures, if you could delineate those. And I would also like to know how many voter roll entries were actually cancelled. In other words, it's not just to find errors, it's also to fix errors. And as a result of the review, and how many omissions were put onto the roll. Is that possible?
Well, I mean, we'll certainly do our best to answer that, Senator. I might ask the Deputy if she would like to answer any of that now. I think what we're referring to in the report, if I'm not mistaken, is the same as what I was referring to in my evidence, where we data match the roll with over 120 million records from various agencies around names and addresses, which is an extraordinary data verification process that gives us outstanding confidence in the levels of the accuracy of the roll.
I record you saying that. I'd just like to know more about the process.
Yes, Senator, we can provide you with more detail.
Roll entries were people who died or left, if they've been removed, if their names have been removed?
Well, they're removed at the end of every month, Senator. So we get an extract of death data from the birth, deaths and marriages around the states and territories at the end of every month, and that is then matched with the roll, and people that have unfortunately passed away are removed from the roll on a regular basis.
I'd like to understand the process, the steps, and what happens to fix errors, whether they're omissions or...
Yes. Yes.
And Senator, if it's useful now, happy to speak a little to that. As the Commissioner says, on any day of the week there's around 8,000 people who either move, become eligible to go on the electoral roll, either through turning 18 or becoming a new citizen, or unfortunately pass away. So the roll is very dynamic. The data that the Commissioner is referring to comes from trusted sources like the Australian Taxation Office or Services Australia, is matched and lined up against the electoral roll. And then when we identify people, for instance, that need to be removed from the roll, there's a process that we go through to object to their enrolment, and that's in line with the requirements of the Commonwealth Electoral Act, and then they come off the electoral roll in those batches that the Commissioner referred to. Similarly, if there are new people who aren't on the roll and the data identifies that they should be, they go into the direct enrolment process. They get a notification in accordance with the Commonwealth Electoral Act and are applied to the roll if they are eligible to be on the roll. So happy to provide any more detail that is useful, but there's a whole range of assurance checks that sits in behind that that are both human-led and system checks as well against the data that mean that we can maintain a highly accurate and current electoral roll.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that. When I started back in the Senate in 2019, we had a long list of things to quiz the AEC about. Mr Rogers eventually worked out we were trying to help him, and that's not being derogatory towards Tom Rogers. And given the chance, he came up and he presented with.
That was me.
Yep,
Yes.
that's right. And it was a very impressive presentation. I'll put that on the record.
Yep.
And that helped us to take many of the items off the list, but there are still some on the list, and we've got 2 left, and that's postal ballots and electoral roll. And we've actually led to a couple of changes in the significant changes. Our queries have led, and our draft legislation have led to significant changes in the way elections are audited. So I think it's mutual benefit. So any detail you can, we've got those 2 issues left.
Well, and Senator, it was the Deputy and myself along with Mr Rogers that came to brief you, and we're happy to do that again, if that would be of assistance to you and your staff.
Okay, thank you. Revisiting a question from some years back around recording of votes in Aboriginal communities, does the AEC use any community members to assist your staff to identify registered voters of voting age and perhaps to reach out to the communities to encourage participation?
Yes, we do, Senator. We have a whole program. We have an Indigenous electoral participation program. It's been running now for many years. As part of that program, we employ community electoral participation officers who are Indigenous people from community, who speak language, who are respected within community. They do enrolment work, awareness work, education work, assistance with finding polling places, polling officials. So it's a critical part of our engagement.
Okay, thank you. We want to make sure everyone has the opportunity to vote.
So do we.
The program to use electronic voter rolls in pre-poll and on voting day, what stage is that at? I understand quite a few of your polling booths have electronic registration, which reassures people on identity security.
Well, we took a significant step forward with that, even more so at this election than what we have in the past. We had the largest rollout of electronic certified lists across the country. I think it was around about 14,000 devices that we rolled out, which covered all pre-poll voting, mobile polling, and then we used those devices for declaration votes in New South Wales, Victoria and Western Australia, who had just come out of redistributions to minimise or to try and help people make sure they got the right ballot paper for the right division. It was an excellent program, incredibly well implemented, and I'm happy to ask the Deputy to provide further information for you because there's some great outcomes from it.
Thanks for the question, Senator. This has been a really successful technology that the ASC has introduced carefully and in a really considered way since the 2013 election, with a very small number of devices initially up to the larger number that the Commissioner just outlined. The benefits of electronic mark-off of the roll are many. As you intimated, it gives us a real-time sense of whether someone has already attempted to vote. And if that is identified through an ECL, then an electronic certified list, that individual will be sent off to cast a provisional vote so that we can check that manually before a vote is counted. It also improves accuracy. So we find that people tend to be marked more accurately, which reduces the number of provisional declaration votes, but also partial admit declaration votes where a voter may not be given the correct House ballot paper because they're not sure where they're enrolled to vote. So we saw a significant reduction in provisional declaration votes and partial admit declaration votes. And we also, as part of the expansion of electronic certified lists, trialled what we called a digital officer in charge return in Tasmania, and that involved uploading the results of the count directly into our election management system. It was a controlled trial, and it meant that instead of the presiding officer calling the divisional returning officer to relay the results over the phone, it was direct, and we saw much improved accuracy and faster results through to the virtual tally room. So that was a really successful trial, and we hope to be able to maintain that footprint into the future. Yes, it's a really great news story about the very careful introduction of technology into elections.
Yes, and some of our questions come from constituents. We pass them on.
Yes.
But one concern is voter ID, and when we explain what the electronic cancellation of a name is, not cancellation but checking off of the name, people feel very reassured.
Yes.
Because it makes a difference.
Marks people off in real time, Senator.
Yeah, so they can't go and vote at a second polling booth.
I think we had 52.7 electors, 52.7% of all electors were marked off with an electronic certified list at this election. And if I can just save myself a little bit of paperwork, I might just take the opportunity to correct my evidence. I think I said nearly 14,000. I think it's 12,300. So we went from 5,500 ECLs in the referendum to 12,300 for this election.
In the referendum on the voice?
Yes.
Just that recently?
We had 5,500 in 2023, and then we increased it to 12,300 for the federal election.
So you're accelerating the rollout?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
I'm going to need to rotate the call. We can certainly come back to you. Just sharing the love. Senator McGrath.
Can I just ask 2 questions on numbers? Oh, I'll come back.
Senator McGrath.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, in your submission to JSCAM, I think page 4, if it helps, you say there are around 670,000 postal vote applications through third parties, both in paper and online forms, and that you had 260 complaints about party postal vote applications. 260 complaints out of 670,000 is quite a small number, and I'm sort of wondering what is your concerns in relation to those complaints that were received, because relatively there are such a small number of them.
Yes, Senator, if I had my time again, I'd probably put the word formal in front of that in terms of formal complaints, because what the submission doesn't point to is a significant amount of social media commentary that occurred during the postal vote period. I wish I had reams of screenshots of the social media commentary. So that the concerns are that electors, firstly, are concerned or worried or a little uncertain about how the postal vote has arrived to them without requesting it. So effectively, who has my data, where did they get it from, and why are they sending me this? So that's one concern that was expressed by many. Then the other concern is some expressed confusion about whether which party it might come from, and some even think that it's come from the AEC, and that the AEC is working with one or both of the major political parties to distribute postal vote material, which is clearly not correct. And then, so that both of those cause, and not just this election, Senator, for many elections, those have caused voter confusion. We know that there's also been some websites that have been established, because it used to be all just paper-based. Now there's some websites. Some of the domain names of those websites people find also to be a little bit misleading. There's a concern around disenfranchising voters who might get agitated, annoyed, not wanting to participate, not wanting to vote as a consequence of the process, or we've also experienced, particularly where this is done in hard copy, those hard copy forms get collated at sometimes state level, and they come to us at the very, very, very last minute, if not after the last minute, for processing and dissemination, and some of those postal packs just don't get to some of those electors. So we've got various concerns which have been going on for many elections.
My understanding is that about 40% of the overall number of postal vote applications come through third parties.
Yep.
Isn't it the case that actually third parties are helping enfranchise voters by making it easier for them to get a vote?
I would be happy to fill that void, Senator, with the great service that the AEC offers, which is quick, clear, tracked, and secure.
But, you know, third parties, voters have the choice too, don't they?
Well,
to
yes.
decide to whether they can go through
and
something they receive from a third party or you know, something through
and
the Electoral Commission.
Yes, and they do at the moment. We would prefer all of them to come through us, but that, if that was to be the case, and obviously that would require legislative reform and Parliament's support for such a change, and I believe that that has occurred in some of the states more recently. I think South Australia, New South Wales and Victoria, for instance, I think are the three states that have now gone to a model where postal vote applications can only be made to and issued by the Electoral Commission. But I think one other option here, of course, Senator, is even if we were the sole issuer of postal votes, parties and candidates could still promote to their constituents to postal vote, but it's just by providing them with the information about how to source that through the AEC.
Did the AEC contribute to the Privacy Act review that took place in the last term of government?
My recollection, Senator, is I think we may have. I think we had an opportunity to provide comment, probably along with, you know, dozens and dozens of other agencies, and I believe we did provide a response.
And the Deputy was nodding vigorously.
Yes,
so.
and my recollection is that our response touched on this issue because, as you would be well aware, I mean, political parties are exempt from the Privacy Act, and I think that also can create some concerns about this form of voting.
I think, if I may, Senator, the other thing to mention in regards to postal voting is that the AEC, wherever possible, encourages voters to vote in person to the extent that they're able, so that we're keeping postal voting for the people who need it most, and it's a very important avenue for some who cannot vote in person. But voting in person maximises the chance of casting a formal vote, and it means that the AEC can both issue it but count it much more quickly. So that's why we're also keen to minimise postal voting and the growth of postal voting wherever possible.
In your submission, you said there were 1,677 breaches of the authorisation requirements that you identified during the election. Of the 1,677, what number are you going to graduate to taking additional action?
Or, Senator, I'd say that we've got around about a handful of ongoing matters that we're continuing to examine.
So, you may give the same answer to my next question. So is the AEC considering bringing any authorisation matters before the courts?
Well, it depends on the outcome of the matters that we've got, and the Deputy's just corrected me. My memory's failing me tonight. It's not a handful, it's 6.
Okay.
So we've got 6 matters that are on foot at the moment, and look, and we've got, well, they could be matters that could well be resolved and there's not enough evidence, or it could all be fine, but there also might be some matters that might end up before the court. We've already got one matter before the court, which is the pamphlet in Wentworth that was distributed. So that matter is before the federal court.
Your submission requests, and I quote, clarifying and strengthening the investigatory powers of the AEC to enable the AEC to more quickly gather evidence and make timely regulatory decisions in the fast-paced electoral communications environment. End of quote. Are you able to expand on that? Sort of, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, as you would appreciate, just as more than anybody, Senator, when the election is being delivered, the environment is incredibly fast-paced, and when we receive complaints, those that are making complaints are expecting incredibly quick responses on our behalf, and that is fair enough, particularly when you've got thousands of people potentially walking past unauthorised or improperly authorised signs out the front of pre-poll voting centres on the Thursday or Friday before polling day. We would like clearer powers to be able to quickly gather information and, in some cases, if we need to, compel that information to be provided so that we can accelerate and finalise those matters as quickly as possible. Whilst I said earlier we get very good responses from major political parties generally, and we've got a good escalation relationship with the parties. That's not always the case with some other candidates, third parties, significant third parties and others who also, to be fair, aren't as experienced around electoral legislation as well.
Would a suggestion of yours in relation to updating authorisation requirements, would that be to have a more universal use of the short authorisation? Is that something that you would be recommending? It would
depend, Senator. I mean, the process that I'd like to play out, if we could, would be for the Joint Standing Committee to conclude their consideration around these sorts of matters, and after they've tabled those considerations, we would then go through a highly consultative process to then update the determination. That there may be recommendations from JSCM around amending some of the authorisation legislation, which would be preferable for that to occur before we updated the determination. But that would be the sort of matter that we would want to consult widely on as part of updating of the determination, which I would like to make some substantive progress on throughout 2026.
In your submission, you made a number of points in relation to exclusion zones outside polling booths and in relation to bulk text messages that are subject to the Constitution's requirement around freedom of political communication. Has the AEC received or considered any legal advice on whether the proposals in your submission are legally sound and would pass a High Court challenge possibly in terms of how they might interpret it?
The short answer is no, Senator. We haven't gone that far. That, I think, to get to that point would require the Electoral Policy Unit to probably draft some proposed legislation, and for that draft legislation to then be the subject of legal advice. The Parliament has successfully navigated the implied freedom of political communication on a number of occasions, authorisations being one of those. So it would be a matter of whether that can be done in these instances or not, but it would all come down to the drafting.
And we'll need to rotate.
That's a perfect segue to go to...
Fantastic. We'll go to Senator Roberts.
Thank you. Just a few more. How many people were issued notices for failing to vote in the 2025 federal election?
We'll just try and look that up for you, Senator. Would you like, is your next question related to the answer, or would you like to proceed with the next question and we'll come back and answer that for you
These are separate
as soon as we can?
How many entries were removed from the voter roll as a result of the process you used to detect and find people who did not vote?
Well, that's a question that would have to take on notice. That's going to take quite some research.
So, Senator, for the 2025 federal election, there was 1,309,568 apparent non-voters.
What percentage was that? Really high, isn't it?
Well, turnout was 90.7%, so it should be 9.3%.
Yeah, it's about 10%. You'd have, what, 14 on the roll?
No, we had 18.
18?
Nearly 18.1 million, so it'll be about 9.3% if our maths is correct.
Okay. And then if you could tell us on notice the other one?
Yes.
One of the ways orphan voter roll entries can be detected is if the person did not vote and a penalty notice was returned with not at this address, something like that.
Yes.
Do they do that?
Yes, some.
I think to our earlier answer, Senator, given that the roll is so accurate now, those sorts of responses are infrequent, and it's sometimes the case that if people don't want to receive mail from the government, they'll return it to sender. So we don't take that as determinative that they don't live at that address. We'll investigate and undertake objection action.
Right, but I imagine it's significant that if you're receiving fewer of those return to sender, then that's encouraging.
Yes, absolutely.
But I think, Senator, also I think just to keep in mind, I think nearly 50,000 Australians change address every week. The figures are around about that.
59,000.
50,000, around about 50,000 change address every week. People renting, buying house, moving house. So you've also got to contextualise that, the roll closes about 26 days before polling day, give or take, and then we are issuing these notices a number of months once we've sort of concluded our investigation after the return of the writ. So we're talking a sort of period of probably 4 to 5 months where every one of those weeks you've got 40 or 50,000 people that are changing address. So inevitably, when we get around to sending, and not all of those people will have updated their enrolment details in the process within time.
In 10 weeks you can have 500,000 people.
I'm sorry?
In 10 weeks you'd have 500,000 people in Australia changing address.
Potentially, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I noticed in your annual report that the AEC is maintaining a significant international relations function, working with the United Nations Development Programme. How much does the AEC spend on programs delivered outside of Australia? Non-notice is fine.
Well, Senator, unless the Deputy is able to put her finger on that quickly, we can provide that to you. I might just be really clear, though. Whatever we spend is money provided to us by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. We don't do anything internationally with other countries that is not supported by Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and signed off by the Foreign Minister.
There are quite a few functions that you do perform overseas. I'm not being critical of that, but I just wanted to get a feel for them.
No, it's a very important part of our work.
And a requirement of our legislation, as you may be aware, Senator, under Section 7 of the Commonwealth Electoral Act, that we conduct that work with the support of the Foreign Minister. It's the amount, I think it would be best to take that on notice. It's a modest amount in the scheme of the Department of Foreign Affairs overseas development assistance work. And it varies from year to year. So for this year, for instance, it might be sort of $1 to $2 million, but in another year, depending on the support that's required, it may be more. So happy to provide more detail on notice if that's useful.
Thank you, that'd be good. So it's around 3, not 30. 3 million, not 30 million.
No, it's certainly not 30 million, but yes.
I'm not trying to pin you down or anything, because you're going to send the
Yes.
accurate
Yes.
numbers in.
Yes, I think the important thing is that it fluctuates, but it's a very modest amount.
Okay, thank you. Last question, Chair. Are you working on any redistributions at the moment? And if so, does that include work on preparing for a theoretical increase in the number of electorates? I didn't catch your answer to to Senator McGrath's.
Well, Senator, we have 3 redistributions on foot at the moment: South Australia, ACT and Tasmania. Then we have Queensland that will occur, that will start in July of next year. So they're the 4 redistributions that we're working on under the legislation. That is because the 7-year anniversary has expired in all of those states and territories. But the answer to anything with respect to a larger parliament, no.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Patterson, did you have anything?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do. Commissioner, I've got some questions about attempts by local councils to restrict signage at polling places during the federal election. The 2 particular examples that I'm most familiar with are Melton Council and Boroondara Council in Melbourne. There may well be others, but these are the ones that have been brought to my attention. And as you may be aware, I've made some FOI applications, including to the AEC, in relation to this. For your assistance, Lex 9503 is the FOI request I made to the AEC, and I have that here, and that can be provided to you or tabled if that's helpful. Seeking your correspondence to the City of Melton.
Yep.
Some documents were provided, but some weren't, and I've sought internal review, which is Lex 9702. Do you have any update on that internal review?
It actually hit my inbox this afternoon as I was preparing
very
for
timely
estimates, Senator. And I've had a quick glance at it, and I think broadly we'll be able to accommodate largely what you're looking for here. There might be 1 or 2 minor exceptions, but I think you'll be largely comfortable with our response.
Great, thank you. Well, that's a good start, and I'll look forward to that when that can be provided. In those FOI documents, it refers to a templated lease, which the AEC confirmed in an email to Melton Council, which is the same one the AEC used with this pre-poll centre. What I want to understand is whether or not there's a condition of the lease or a venue hire agreement for a polling venue that political parties' signage would be freely permitted.
Thanks, Senator. We have a number of templates that we use for this process, because as you would appreciate, we're trying to sign 7,000 plus leases in a very short period of time. So we try and collate them into schools and those sorts of things. I might ask the Acting Chief Legal Officer to provide a response to your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Mr Will Mueller, Acting Chief Legal Officer. There's not an explicit provision relating to freely placing signage. The number of premises that the AEC is looking to hire during an electoral event is high, and there are 2 types. There are the arrangements with say schools or community organisations, and then private licence agreements. And so negotiating across, I think, in relation to those private licence agreements, about 800 to 900, I think, but I might need to that's to the extent of my knowledge. It's important that we're able to kind of action them fairly quickly during the writ-to-writ period, and so no explicit provision.
Okay. I mean, well, there's obviously the implied freedom of political communication, which we may get to in a moment, but it's particularly pertinent to the City of Melton issue, because I've also made an FOI to them in relation to the Caroline Springs pre-poll booth. It really demonstrates the extraordinary lengths that Melton City Council and its officers went to restrict signage at that venue. And helpfully there's even body cam footage of a Melton Council officer, which was released under FOI, where they even impounded an AEC A-frame as part of their attempts to restrict signage at the venue, which is pretty special.
one internal message, and I'll table this as well. This is extract number 1 from the FOI, so that you've got access to that. But one text message between senior Melton Council officers sent on the 24th of April says, "I thought I'd give you a heads up re an issue with some electoral signage at the CS Scouts Hall. The candidate signage is very large and on council land. The site is being used by the AEC without council knowledge or consent, as far as I can tell on reasonable inquiries to those in the organisation who would have dealt with this." So, did the AEC use this site without council knowledge or consent?
Well, I don't know that I'd characterise it that way, Senator. I have to say, I don't have 100% knowledge of this particular instance.
Yeah.
My sense is, and I'm happy to be corrected by my colleagues, that we engage with who we believe are the owners, occupiers of premises in good faith, and we engage with those that we believe are in a position of authority to sign the lease. This sounds like one of those rare instances, and I would say it would be rare because I'm not familiar with too many others, where perhaps they did not have the authority to sign the lease, and then it's become come to the attention of the Melton City Council, and they have objected and started to revoke or tried to determine the circumstances of a lease. So it sounds to me like either our inquiries weren't deep and probing enough to determine whether they had the relevant authority, or the people that signed the lease believe they had the authority, but Melton City Council had a different view.
Right, so just confirming there's nothing in the lease about prohibiting or limiting the display of political party signage?
No, not that I'm aware of.
So those FOI documents, further FOI documents, which I'll table now, which is extract number 2.
So can I just stop you there for a minute?
Yeah.
Senator Patterson, there are people's names all over this. We don't have a log number. We don't have any details. You're giving us just one copy to try and look at and share with the witnesses at the same time. Do you have any further detail?
I'll ask my
Just so
staff
that
to
we can-
email electronic copies to the Secretariat to assist, but these were documents released to me by the Council under FOI, and they didn't seek to redact the names.
Okay, that makes me nervous if we'll hand them over to you, but if you could just not use the names that are in these documents, I'd be very grateful until such time as we confirm.
Certainly.
Thank you.
So in that second extract, which I've just provided, there are Melton Council officers who believe that political signage is not allowed on council land, and I quote, "unless it is stipulated in an agreement," which it obviously hasn't, which is from some Microsoft Teams messages sent on the 24th of April. When did the AEC realise that Melton Council would ban signage at the Scout Centre, and why didn't the AEC take action to prevent this?
I think we might need to come back to your notice with that, Senator. I'm going to have to consider those documents and the information that we've got, and perhaps ask some additional questions about when we became aware. I'm assuming that that wasn't clear from the information we've provided so far in the FOI?
No.
Right. As you would appreciate, though, Senator, occasionally council bylaws are applied or interpreted in different parts of the country, and we have no influence or control over those bylaws, which is what obviously occurred, I think, also at Boonundurra when they applied their bylaws. So it's it can be a matter that arises from time to time.
Yeah, I'll come to that. Just for your background and to assist you providing the answer on notice, I'm advised that this venue has been used twice by the AEC as a polling centre, in the voice referendum and in the federal election. So if it is the case that someone who didn't have authority to sign a lease with the AEC, that means they've done it twice, which would be pretty surprising. And I'm not aware of any issues about signage specifically in relation to the voice referendum, just the federal election.
Okay, thank you.
I'll provide one further extract relating to Melton City Council from their FOI, which reveals an internal email between Melton Council officers, which was on the 2nd of May. It says, "Hi, names. from the AEC rang today stating the Liberal Party have plastered their advertisement across 115 Tenterfield Drive again. When he questioned them, they presented the attached court order. However, it is not an order for the City of Melton. Photos were provided by AEC. We have not attended as yet, and I will await direction from yourselves before doing so. Later, a council official says to another on Microsoft Teams, like, go up and say we're going to be removing signage. They will say injunction, blah, blah, and then we say we're unaware and therefore are proceeding as normal in 5 minutes. Why was the AEC reporting Liberal Party signage to Melton Council?
I don't have any knowledge of that at the moment, Senator. I'd have to see if we can understand why that may have been the case. I mean, it is.
I wonder, Mr. Pope, if you actually need a chance. There's quite a lot of documents here, valid questions, obviously, Senator Patterson, but might be worth being able to look at the material.
I'm happy to have a look at it, Senator. I mean, it may well be that if that is accurate, of course, and if that is what our staff may have done, it may well have been that they thought that the staff was on council land and might have been in breach of bylaws, that the council might have wanted to have knowledge of it.
Sure, and I'll look forward to your answer in this specific case on notice, but in general terms, does the AC normally report violations of council bylaws to councils? That's not the AC's role, is it?
No, it's not something that we would normally do. It's not something that we would ask our staff to actually do. So it'd be something that's probably been self-initiated if it has actually occurred.
I'd certainly hope not, because it could be a contravention of the implied freedom of political communication, which the AEC should be more familiar with than anyone.
Absolutely, and it's a sort of matter we'd want to stay out of.
Exactly.
So that's why I mean, if it has occurred, it may well be just self-initiated, and it would be rare. I mean, normally our involvement in these sorts of things, as you would appreciate, is actually where one party's put up signage and then there's a dispute about positioning, size, unfairness, inequity, or signage being stolen or moved and those sorts of things.
Yeah. So I want to move on to Boroondara Council now. And again, I've obtained documents from Boroondara Council under FOI, and I will call this Extract 4 in relation to City of Boroondara, which I'll provide to you now. The City of Boroondara sent a letter to all the Kooyong candidates on the 1st of May, and they said, and I quote, "The Supreme Court was not asked to and did not make any findings about the validity of Council's administration of Clause 27 of its Amenity Local Law 2019, and it remains Council's position that Clause 27.1 of the local law is valid and effective for the purposes of the display of the electoral signage. It is also Council's position that all permits issued under Clause 27 of the local law to candidates' representatives for the display of A-frame signs at the early voting centre on 29 April remain valid." That means, in Council's view, that this is something they can do at the next election as well, and they'll continue to confiscate candidate signs despite a court injunction which prevented them from doing so. How is this consistent with the implied freedom of political communication that councils take it upon themselves just to remove signage of political party candidates, even when there's court injunctions?
Well, I mean, my recollection, Senator, is the Supreme Court of Victoria found that it wasn't.
Wasn't what, sorry?
That it wasn't consistent with the implied freedom of political communication.
That's right. They granted the Liberal Party's injunction, which required Boroondara to return the signage to Liberal candidates. But you can see that this letter from City of Boroondara is actually after that injunction, and they're saying that their law is still valid. So I think the reason why I'm raising this is I think we have an ongoing policy issue here, which is councils who have no constitutional authority to restrict the implied freedom of political communication are taking it upon themselves to restrict political party candidates being able to communicate with voters at a booth.
Now, I'm just going to intervene right here and just sort of say, do you have a great deal more? We're supposed to take a break?
Maybe 5 minutes on this issue, maybe slightly less.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you.
Senator, as I indicated, I think broadly you're correct that there are from time to time some challenges between the interface of Commonwealth electoral laws, the implied freedom of political communication under the Constitution, and local government bylaws. We do come across this from time to time, and there is, I think, more work to be done with respect to that, including some broader awareness by local government councils about how that interface is to occur. And I would have thought that the injunction issued by the Victorian Supreme Court would be instructive.
I would have thought so too. And just to put some more colour around Burundara Council in particular, at one point during this dispute, they said that each political party would be allowed to have, I think, 2 A-frames only, or potentially 1 A-frame only. But either way, this was a booth at which voters from a range of seats were coming to vote.
Yes.
And so the Liberal Party's Kooyong candidate might have been able to have a frame informing voters of their options, but the Chisholm candidate wasn't, and the Menzies candidate wasn't, and the Melbourne candidate wasn't, let alone Senate candidates who might have, which have been represented at the polling booth. And that's clearly an absurd attempt to restrict political communication, isn't it?
Well, you know, I think there might also be there, Senator, and I stand to be corrected here, but there might also be some confusion with the state electoral laws in Victoria around the amount of campaign signs and campaigners that are available that ought to be outside the front of polling places. So I think that's also another factor here.
I agree. I think there's no question people do get confused between those. I think particularly problematic for the Burundara Council is it's a Teal-controlled council. The Mayor, Sophie Tawney, is an associate of the local member, Monique Ryan, and it was Teal candidates who first complained about this, and it was a Teal council which then sought to take away, the political signage of their opponents. What options are available to the Parliament to ensure that that kind of attempted interference in the electoral process doesn't happen at the next election?
Well, Senator, I'm not an expert on the Constitution, but I think none. Because I think there was supposed to be a referendum with respect to that in 2013 under Prime Minister Rudd, which didn't proceed.
Yes, in terms of the constitutional authority of local governments, yes, they have none.
Yes. So I think from a legislative perspective, none. I think the best avenue here is education and awareness. Now, I'm not a constitutional expert, but I'm happy to be corrected.
No. It doesn't look like Mr Muir wants to correct you.
No.
How about just, and this is where I'll end it.
I do feel
Chair,
like this issue is going to get some further attention through JSCAM as well.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And just a final question, Chair, and then I'm done for the AEC. What about AEC practice and education? What can you do, either in your contracts with councils or venues, to make it clear that they have no role in restricting political communication?
We will have a look at that, Senator. There may well be a clause in the contract, but there might also just be a fact sheet and awareness that we can provide as when we hand out contracts with respect to implied freedom of political communication and election signage.
Thank you. I'll look forward to your other answers on notice. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We will now take a break and return at 10 o'clock. No, we will release the AEC at this point in time. Thank you very much for your time. We do indeed appreciate it. We will be returning with the Parliamentary Workplace Support Service. Thank you. I would now like to welcome Ms Leonie McGregor, Chief Executive Officer from the Parliamentary Workplace Support Services. Ms McGregor, would you like to make an opening statement?
Thank you, Chair. I do have just a brief, not so much a statement, but an update on a couple of matters that may be of interest to senators.
Lovely, please go ahead.
So, Leonie McGregor, Chief Executive Officer with the Parliamentary Workplace Support Service. Parliamentarians, MOP staff, Parliamentary Department and public service employees, Comcard drivers, media and AFP members whose primary place of work is Parliament House, that's in total around 4,700 workers, have been invited to share their views through our culture survey. Today we have passed the 720 responses mark, which represents a 15% response so far. We sincerely thank everyone who's completed the survey, and we hope that many more responses will be received before the survey closes on the 12th of December. Data from the survey will be used in combination with other data that we've obtained through parliamentary departments and also through a diversity survey to inform the PWSS's first comprehensive report on Commonwealth parliamentary workplaces, which is due to be published next year. In early 2026, we want to be able to publish the first of what will become an annual report on the culture, performance, diversity, gender equality, work health and safety and the handling of conduct matters in Commonwealth parliamentary workplaces. And as for all workplaces, an understanding of the strengths and challenges will guide efforts to improve, and we intend that the report will present a full and balanced picture that affirms the good things that are happening and shows where we need to focus our efforts. The other update I wanted to provide was in relation to the development of a professional development program. So we have one in development for MOP staff and one for parliamentarians. This year, the PWSS developed a comprehensive professional development program for staff. It captures the range of skills and capabilities required for MOPS Act roles, as well as key competencies that uphold safety, respect and performance in parliamentary workplaces. Since October, we've been undertaking wide-ranging consultation on the draft PDP, including through direct feedback opportunities offered to all MOP staff and targeted consultation workshops held with around 90 stakeholders. We plan to launch the staff professional development program early in the new year, and it will provide MOP staff and leaders with a framework to guide their future development and career pathways. This framework is also to inform the PWSS's delivery of structured, high-quality and contextualised training and development for our clients in formats and delivery modes that ensure maximum engagement. We are also in the early days of consultation on a PDP for parliamentarians, which will reflect the capabilities that they need to be employers and leaders of safe and respectful workplaces and other skills that may help them to be their personal and professional best in their uniquely demanding roles. End of update.
Thank you very much. I think we'll go to Senator Hume.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms McGregor. I'm dying to find out what professional development is going to be available to parliamentarians, to find out what specific skills we need to be good at the job. I'm assuming you've asked your minister what skills he has that's made him rise so far and so fast.
Keep going, Senator, please.
I want to ask a question first and foremost about AI.
Wasn't all that fast.
Well, okay, far and slow.
Along the way as well.
Many hiccups.
I want to ask the PWSS about their policy on the use of AI. Can you just provide me some examples of the types of things that staff might use AI for?
So currently, Senator, and I'm not sure if you might be best placed to talk about that, is that Kath will come and talk about it. We have been developing a policy on the use of AI, and I'll hand over to Kath Messer to talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Senator. Kath Messer. We do have a draft policy on the use of AI for staff of the PWSS that was developed this year and has been consulted through the PWSS Staff Consultative Committee. It draws on the Australian Government AI guidance, and it's used for the purposes of AI for acceptable uses is with the tools that are provided to us through the Department of Parliamentary Services. So predominantly that's Copilot. And there are uses that are supported and not supported, spelled out in that policy. So particularly for automating routine tasks to make work more efficient, but not as a substitute for decision making.
And are there any things that you wouldn't expect people to be putting into AI from the PWSS?
Senator, yes, so no confidential information. The instance of Copilot that we have is a closed network, so we are able to put quite a bit of corporate information in there and it doesn't go outside of the walls of the DPS system. But there are, as I mentioned, several tasks that we would say that you should not be using AI for. So that would be, for example, the making of human decisions.
I'm interested because my office recently sought some advice from the PWSS on a human resources matter, and the response was very prompt and it was thorough, which is terrific. However, the first line of the email after the words personal privacy said, and I'm giving you the quote here, "Certainly, !" Here's a polished and consistent version of your message with improved flow and clarity. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with ChatGPT, that's a line straight out of ChatGPT. And I'm all for embracing AI under the right circumstances, but I was a bit worried when I saw that was a personal email that had clearly, that had mentioned specific names of people in my office. It wasn't, a confidential matter per se, other than the fact that I needed some advice on how to deal with a staff member that had been injured and unwell. But the idea that perhaps that somehow that had been put through a ChatGPT made me very worried. Are you telling me it wasn't ChatGPT, that it was?
It probably wouldn't have been ChatGPT. It quite possibly would have been Copilot, which is a closed instance. So the data, I haven't seen the email you're talking about, and I'm sorry. Yeah.
I almost didn't see it either. It was deleted almost immediately. Like it got recalled immediately. I think whoever had sent it had seen the error of their ways. Yes. I suppose the DTA guidance on AI, did you say that that's what you were following, or did you say that
That's correct. There's a couple of national documents we followed, yes.
And the first of the three overarching principles in that guidance is to protect privacy and safeguard government information. So how can people be sure that the information that they send to PWSS will be held in confidence and not shared into the ether?
I think, again, through the tool that we have, it is not, it doesn't go into open source AI, which is what ChatGPT is. It's a closed instance, so it's just provided by Department of Parliamentary Services, the Copilot, which has similar, it's generative AI, the same as ChatGPT, but our information isn't going to a database beyond the PWSS's instance of Copilot.
Okay, so I suppose what I'm asking you is, can we be assured that there is no inappropriate use of AI coming out of the PWSS that would potentially breach privacy? And you're telling me, yes, that is something that we can be assured of.
Yes, Senator, if people are following the policy, that's correct, yes.
Okay, sorry, you said if people are following the policy. But the policy's in draft form right now?
That's correct. It's been consulted and is in draft, yep.
Right.
But we have had numerous sort of, I guess, we have had engagement with our staff on the use and the correct use of AI in the workplace, and people are aware of all of the public service policies, I guess, in relation to AI. So I would be fairly certain that people understand what is a proper use and what is not. But we will, I think, given that example, we will assure ourselves of that fully over the next couple of days.
All right, terrific. I have some questions about work health and safety policies. I know that a huge amount of work has been conducted to implement the new workplace safety policies, and I'm conscious that there's more work still being done. I just want to ask a couple of very brief questions in relation to policies and how they apply. The PWSS assists officers with policies that apply to our workplace, clearly, and there are several policies that cover our workplaces, many of which were put in place in 2022, such as the Workplace Health, Safety and Wellbeing Policy and the Early Intervention Policy. Now, those policies still apply, or they apply right now, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And is there any plan to update those policies?
Senator, it's Scott Mischke, the Acting Deputy CEO. All of our policies do undergo a regular review and get consulted with the WHS committee. That committee is currently being re-established for the 48th Parliament.
That's the staff committee?
That is correct.
Right.
Yep.
Yes, okay. That was what I was getting to. So the staff committee is being re-established and those two policies will go through that committee?
That's correct. I can't tell you exactly the forward schedule of those policies because they were two that have more recently been refreshed, but ordinarily within a 2 to 3 year cycle all of our policies are refreshed and all WHS policies do go for consultation through that committee.
Okay, so that committee was established originally under the PWSS Act, is that right? Or is that a separate committee?
I think it's a separate committee, isn't it? The WHS committee.
Yeah, the WHS committee isn't established under the PWSS Act. That's the PWSS Consultative Committee.
Right, so the Consultative Committee, is that going to be re-established? Well, let's just say, what's the status of that body now?
Of the Work Health Safety Committee or the Consultative Committee?
No, the Consultative Committee.
So the Consultative Committee is yet to be established. And we will establish that as soon as we have. I think there are some things that need to be agreed to or are about to be agreed to, I think, by the Minister.
Right.
The rules that relate to the legislation, and once that's done, we can establish the Consultative Committee.
And is the membership of that committee, is that been established or determined also?
No, not yet. The rules will establish the membership.
Right, so the rules will determine the way people are selected to be on that?
The construction.
Right.
I think both the construction of the committee and the way that people are selected onto it.
Right, okay. Yeah. In some of the policies it refers to a notifiable incident or a notable incident in the work health and safety and wellbeing policy. What is the PWSS's definition of a notifiable or a notable incident? Are they the same thing?
Senator, the notifiable incident requirements are established by Comcare under the WHS Act.
Right.
So we follow Comcare's guidance in terms of what needs to be notified.
And is that the same as a notable incident?
No, I think a notable incident may in fact be a typo, but I will go back and have a look and see what reference that we've made there within the policy, because that does sound unusual.
Okay, all right, thank you. I mean, I've always appreciated the common sense approach that the PWSS has taken in the concept of developing responses to grey areas that are often in these policies. So in reviewing those policies, I just want to clarify, what is the definition of a workplace?
Right.
So a workplace would take its ordinary meaning in terms of Commonwealth parliamentary workplaces, but in fact it is much broader than that in terms of work can be undertaken flexibly in today's modern workplace. So that could include anywhere where work is undertaken by a MOP staff or parliamentarian.
Right. So just for the benefit of doubt, it would include when colleagues are socialising outside of work, when they are travelling outside of their regular workplaces. Is there an attempt made to define or not exclude particular...
I'm just trying to remember. I feel like there might be somewhere in the legislation something that provides some exclusions, but I will have to take that on notice just because it's a bit of detail that I don't have with me at the moment. But I think in general the acceptance is that wherever, that parliamentary workplaces are very broad, and for parliamentarians obviously it can be very broad. Some of our legislation is really targeted towards defining a workplace as somewhere where there are Commonwealth parliamentary workplace participants, but I just have in my head that there's an exclusion somewhere for certain parliamentary activity, so I think I just would like to take that on notice. Sorry, Senator.
Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
For the benefit of my colleagues and all of our staff, it might be helpful if we confirm that the policy would apply to Christmas parties, if they are a work event.
Yes.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay, that is correct. Even if the Christmas party takes place off-site and after hours?
Most likely, yes.
Excellent, thank you. That was exactly what I wanted to get on the record. And for the benefit of staff and parliamentarians, I just want to make that clear that you offer training on all these policies, and also their responsibilities in the workplace. That's
Yes.
correct?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And that the summer break tends to be a time when parliamentary officers get a chance to undertake some of the work that we don't get around to during the rest of the year. I just wanted to know whether you're offering training over January or December.
I think we are. We'll probably...
PWSS never sleeps?
Officer. Yeah, we never sleep.
Never sleep, that's what I like to hear. Okay, so who should officers or parliamentarians contact if they'd like to organise training?
I think contact Kath Messer. Kath's our Chief Learning and Communications Officer, and responsible for the broader professional development program.
Terrific. Okay, thank you. That's all I had for you. It's almost like a Dorothy Dixer, isn't it?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
I don't think we have any further for PWSS, but we do have for EPA.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much for coming and sharing. That's very helpful.
I hope everyone enjoys filling out their survey.
Can't wait. We look forward to the results. Thank you very much. We will release you from the program, and we will ask representatives from the Independent Parliamentary Expense Authority to come to the table.
No problem. See you tomorrow. See you.
Do we have the representatives from the Independent Parliamentary Expense Authority? Yes. Welcome to Ms Christina Grant, Chief Executive Officer, and other officers of IPIA. Ms Grant, do you have an opening statement?
I do not.
Okay, well, we will just go directly to questions, and we'll go to Senator Patterson.
Thanks, Chair. Earlier this evening, I asked your Finance Department colleagues about issues with corporate travel management overcharging, and they redirected me to ask you questions here to the extent to which it related to parliamentarians' travel. So just firstly, you're familiar with the media reports about CTM overcharging UK customers to the tune of $162 million?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Christina Grant, CEO of the Independent Parliamentary Expenses Authority. Yes, I am aware of the media.
Thank you. There's obviously been that international media coverage, but there's also a story which has just gone up on the Australian newspaper tonight by Liam Mendes, where he interviews the Australian boss of CTM, Jamie Ferris. I'm not sure if that's correct pronunciation. But among other things, he insists he's not standing down, and his board hasn't asked him to stand down. But worryingly, when asked if other customers should be concerned about overcharging, specifically Australian taxpayers, he said, "I can't comment." So what action has IPIA taken since this media reporting came to light about the contracts we have with CTM?
Thank you, Senator. So we have met with CTM and received their assurance that the current media issues don't affect the contract that we have in place for parliamentary travellers. That is the best information that we have at this time, but obviously the situation is evolving.
I'm sure they would say that, though. What kind of independent assurance do we have that we're not also being overcharged, as they appear to have done in the United Kingdom?
I guess the way that our contract works is a little bit different to the way that most contracts work, because we are not charged when you book the flight. We are charged after you take the flight, and then you would see all of the flights that are taken by your office in your regular expenditure report. And so we have a checking process, I guess, built in because of the way that we are billed and the way that we report expenditure and have you check your expenditure. So it would be highly likely that we would be aware if there were sort of significant inconsistencies. We do from time to time have incorrect flight details on expenditure reports and have those addressed, but we are not aware of any large-scale issues insofar as how the billing has worked under the current contract.
So that would certainly hopefully capture any instances where we're being charged for flights that weren't actually taken, for example, but it might not account for, say, a margin that is being taken by the company. How confident are you that the margin is a reasonable commercial rate and not gouging as appears to be in the UK?
So under our contract, we do have access to Australian government fares, which is a little bit different, I guess, to the arrangements that may be in place in the UK and Europe, but I don't have a huge amount of detail. Based on what we know so far, we have been advised that the Australian CTM business is not affected by the issues, and it's CTM that has advised us of that. And we are currently watching the situation unfold. We obviously regularly review our expenditure with CTM, and we have parliamentarians check the expenditure with CTM as well. I think if there was broad-scale issues, we would probably be aware of them, noting the volume of flights that we deal with. But we will continue to monitor the situation to identify whether the issue might have impacted our clients in any way.
Look, I hope you're right, but I think a bit more scepticism is warranted. I mean, the media reporting shows that CTM accounts in the UK were signed off by their auditor, which was PwC, I think, for 14 years.
Yeah.
It was only when a new auditor, Deloitte, was brought in that this was identified. So if even an auditor who has access to the company's books can't identify it in 14 years and it takes a new auditor to bring it to light, I don't think assurances from the company are sufficient to be confident that Australian taxpayers haven't lost out here.
Yeah, I would agree, obviously.
So what other steps can you take, or is there a whole of government process that will occur to satisfy us?
There may well be a whole of government process, and that's a Department of Finance arrangement. We will work with our colleagues in the Department of Finance going forward.
They haven't notified you of one. They haven't said we're investigating this, or we've set up this process to look into this.
Not at this point, but I would say it's very early in the process, and facts are still being established in relation to what has happened internationally and what could potentially have happened here.
Yeah, and I will ask them further questions about that tomorrow, because obviously this is a whole of government provider, not just for parliamentarians to travel and their staff. But just one issue in this article in The Australian tonight, which really leapt out at me as a cause for concern, was a quote from Doug Tynan, who's a hedge fund manager that tracks CTM. And he's quoted in The Australian as saying, "Ever since we started following them in 2018, corporate travel management has reported profit margins starkly higher than any of their competitors. This alone makes no sense in a competitive industry where everyone is doing the same thing, booking airfares and hotel rooms," he said. And he believes that, quote, "Friday's revelations is likely just the start. Just wait until auditors take a proper look at the British Virgin Islands joint ventures that house part of the company's Asian arm. That is a structure that no one's talking about yet, but it never made any sense to us." I mean, if that's right, and I'm not an expert on these matters, Mr. Tynan is, that's pretty alarming, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a media article. It hasn't been substantiated. You know, there's not really a lot for me to kind of comment on fact-wise. All I can say is that our contract is very specific. We do pay service fees in relation to the level of service that CTM provide to our clients. You know, 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We have a different level of service under our contract with CTM. And so the arrangements are a little bit different to the Australian government arrangements, but the whole of Australian government fares still apply in relation to IPIA's contract. So there are some similarities, but I guess our contract's quite specific. And so I think it's likely if there were significant issues, we would be seeing them. But we are very open to considering the matter and continuing to look for issues and for working with the Department of Finance should that be required.
When did CTM take over the contract for parliamentarians? Just a couple of years ago?
Yeah, 2022. We obviously follow the Australian government procurement requirements, and so we are actually approaching the market at the moment.
Right. Oh, that's timely, I guess. Minister, is the government concerned by these reports?
Well, naturally concerned by the reports, and we'll be monitoring the situation very, very closely. My recollection is that under the procurement requirements, the previous organisation that provided the service could no longer bid for a continuation of their contract, and so that opened it up to other organisations. Under our free trade agreement with the United Kingdom, of course, the United Kingdom have got the right to bid for service contracts in Australia, so we can't stop these companies from making a bid.
I think CTM is actually Australian owned, not UK owned.
There definitely is an Australian business, but I understand they have a UK arm and maybe a European arm as well, so I think there's multifaceted.
Right, well there you go, I've learnt something new about them. In that case, we were entitled under our free trade agreement to bid for contracts in the...
Let's not hold this up as a success story of the bilateral trade relationship if it turns out these reports are correct.
Kingdom, no, that's right. But look, as Ms Grant just said, obviously if the contracts are coming up shortly, then that gives an opportunity for us to have a much closer look at this and make another decision.
Minister, you said that the government would be concerned by this and be monitoring the situation. Has the government done actually anything proactive to investigate this situation to satisfy ourselves that Australian taxpayers haven't been defrauded by hundreds of millions of dollars?
Ms Grant already indicated that she's made an approach to the...
no, I'm asking about the government. I'm asking about ministers.
Well,
are you aware if your colleague Senator Gallagher has directed any action by the Department of Finance?
Well, I appreciate that this information has only just recently come to light, but we'll take all the steps necessary to ensure that Australian taxpayers are getting value for money through their travel organisation.
I mean, it appears that $162 million has been defrauded from the UK government, according to their own auditors. If it's anything like that in Australia, that would be an egregious theft of Australian taxpayers' money, wouldn't it?
Well, at this stage, nobody's suggesting that. No, forewarned is forearmed, or forearmed is forewarned. No, look, the issues require detailed examination, and we'll surely do that, Senator Patterson.
Okay. Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Chair.
Senator Collins, do you have anything? Senator Sharma.
Can I just follow up on this just
Absolutely.
briefly, if I might? I think just having a look at this whilst we're answering questions, so CTM shares have been suspended from trading since, I think, September of this year on the ASX. Is there any creditor risk to the Australian government if CTM was to fall over?
Not at this stage. We've received assurance from CTM that they can continue to operate under the contract and provide the services as required. So there's been absolutely no indication as yet that their Australian business has stopped performing any functions or that they wouldn't be able to perform the functions required under the contract.
Okay. But if that were to happen, because obviously as my colleague said, they'll tell you that until the moment it's no longer true. What implications would there be for the government? And have we paid the contract out until 2027, for instance? Is CTM holding any assets of the Australian government?
It's just a standard Australian government contract. We've given them a 1-year extension while we go through the procurement process. We don't pay in advance. In fact, we pay after flights have flown, which is probably fairly unique, I would have thought, under these types of arrangements. Most contracts, you would be paying for the flights on booking, but our arrangement is specific under this contract, so we don't pay until the flight's actually been flown or there's been a no-show.
So we don't extend any credit to CTM then? No. They're not holding any Australian government assets?
Not that I'm aware of, but that's probably a question really for the Department of Finance. Yeah, our contract is only for the service aspect, for the booking service, for flights and hire cars. When you call CTM and book your flights, that's the service that we pay for, not anything beyond that.
Okay. And did you say earlier there's a competitive tendering process underway now?
Yeah. as the Minister indicated, we are compliant with the Australian government procurement requirements, and that means that we do at regular intervals need to approach the market and ensure that we are achieving good value for money for the taxpayer. And we have reached that point. And so over the coming months, we will be going through that process in accordance with Australian government requirements.
So is there like a RFI or an RFT or something on that?
Yes, there is an RFT that is
on the Ausgov tender website.
In the market, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, one further question I should have asked. Ms Grant, you said earlier that CTM provided this advice. Was this verbally or in writing, the advice?
Mr Frost, it was verbally. Did they provide it in writing as well?
No, just verbally at the moment.
Right, and when? How recently was this?
Friday of last week.
Friday of last week, okay. And have they undertaken to provide you any further information in writing?
We have regular discussions with them and we'll raise that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
All done?
Yes, I'd like to. Chair.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming in and answering our questions. We will now release you from the program, and that concludes today's hearing. I would like to thank all of the witnesses, but also particularly thanks to Hansard and Broadcasting and to our Secretariat for all of their efforts today. Huh?
I said and your colleagues.
And my colleagues. I'm delighted for the support and engagement of my colleagues over the day. And I will now declare this meeting of the Senate Finance and Public Administration Legislation Committee adjourned.